Yeah, and the root connection is asking, so do I understand correctly that anybody can apply to be a member of United Designers?
Well, here's the thing. So we have a platform that we use for doing the design work for as a designer. And if you want to be a designer and you want to work in the platform, you really need to take the design course. And
Okay.
there's three levels for design. There's like the 595, I think it's the 1250 and the 1750, $1,750 for the expert level. That's so that you know our design process and you know how to use Adobe Illustrator at the basic level. You know what all the resources are so you can actually do the work at whatever level you want to work, right? So, but if you want to just hire us for your purposes and what you need to have done, great, because we have people like some of the people you see on the screen here. Alicia is a GIS botanist. She is amazing botanist that
Mm.
also does GIS. So there, she does plant community maps that would just
Oh.
blow your mind on an area. Um, and then we have Bruce Blair at the top. He's actually is a teachings in landscape architecture. Uh, Owen Hablatzer is actually a holistic farm instructor. Sarah Garcia down in the bottom there, she's in Spain. Mike is in the East Coast. Warushka on the upper right, she's in the Netherlands, the co-founder. So basically, people have different roles for how we work.
Yep.
And I think I don't really have that slide in here, but you can see on our website that we have consultants and we have partners. And so, as you can imagine, if somebody has a degree in GIS and that's their business, they don't need to know how to use Adobe Illustrator and they don't need to know permaculture, but they need to be an expert at GIS to give us what we need. And of course, over time, as people work with us, of course, you just learn it through osmosis.
Right.
So, as we work with people, they get to know permaculture, they get to know the understanding, and it all comes together. But what we really need are people that are experts at what they do to supply us with the information that we need. Patrick Whitefield, I don't know if you remember him. He had a
Yep.
book, I think it was called Reading the Landscape.
Mm.
Um, and it's like that. It's like all of a sudden, you don't even have to be there yet. You understand what you're going to be dealing with. Once you kind of learn how to read the landscape, just from the aerials, the pictures, then you go into the detail. And after a while, that pattern recognition, remember patterns to details? Pattern language and pattern recognition starts to build in your brain because all these things repeat as you go to all these different sites. Situations repeat, soils repeat, landscapes repeat, and the more mileage you have with doing it, then you understand here's where we need to start. We are the explainers, and as we work in permaculture as designers, when you start doing more and more work, eventually you can jump on with USAID anytime. They're always looking for volunteers to travel. And I know a permaculture designer, I was just watching a video about them working out in Africa.
Mm.
There are lots of ways to get the mileage, but also you have to have the experience and the expertise to bring to the table, of course, in order to get the trips, you might say, but then also to be able to explain simply what actually needs to happen. First, it reminds me back in the day, Bruce Blair in Minnesota was one of my mentors, and I was just getting into permaculture. And I just said, Bruce, this is so depressing. Everything I see is a problem. All these issues, I have no clue how this is going to go. And he said, well, the nice thing about it is that you go through all the problems on the other end, all the solutions are going to show up. And all those solutions are going to be the backside of all this depression, right? So
Mm.
that pendulum's going to swing back again, and you're gonna see the answers. But I'd have to say is like with the heart, head, and hands. Like the heart is where our intention comes from, right? What we want to do, how we think things should go, our hope and our desires, right? The emotion part is I have this intention to do these things. And we work with a lot of people that have good intentions. And if you know where that goes, right? But they don't have the expertise. That's the head, right? That is,
Mm.
like you're saying, the calculations, the measurements, doing things right. And we tell people all the time, you can have all the great intentions, but you know what? You need an engineer for that, right? We need an
Right.
electrician for that. All
Right.
the good intentions aren't going to make your electrical safe, and it's not going to
Right.
make your foundation not crack, right? So you
Yes.
need people that are thinking in their head, and that's the expertise. I also think that the combination of the head and the heart is what I like to call the biological intelligence, because
Mm.
that's when, like, we call it also the sniff test. It's like there's something wrong with that. I'm not quite sure what it is. And you
Mm.
can watch any number of YouTubes these days of somebody doing something on their farm or, a greenhouse or whatever. And it's got every once in a while, it's like, I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe where they are, that'll work. So there's those kinds of things. But then also the hands, I would call it, it's basically muscle memory. If you've ever heard about that, you have to teach your body what the motions are, almost
Yeah.
like a ballet and by dance, right? That's how you get
Mm.
fast. Swinging a hammer, how you swing a hammer, how you hit the nail. That's something your body, your hands and your muscles remember. And after a while, like driving a car, hopefully, it's just automatic how you do
Yeah.
that. So the skills to do things have to come basically from your hands, either on a keyboard or with a trowel or whatever it might be, or maybe it's driving a bobcat or an excavator with those things. But the capability, the expertise, and the skill has to come from your hands. But you need to
Mm.
have to really a vision of doing that, and that's going to come from your head, and then of course a reason, hopefully very good reasons, and that comes from your heart. What is it like the sustainable future? What do we envision if everything would go right?
Yeah.
Um, and So one of the things I would hope, if that's going to happen, right, is we basically downsize our society. I'm not saying population, I don't want to get into that, but we kind of need to downsize our expectations.
Okay.
A lot of the superfluous gratification that we
Yeah.
expect these days. In all fairness, I do have an Alexa, you know, and I can tell her to turn on a fan and turn on the Starlink, things like that. So I have those things, but there, what we're really trying to do, and I think the best case scenario is that we can buffer. There's what a lot of things we do in ecological restoration, trying to buffer the extremes. Is
Yeah.
it can we buffer the trauma of any kind of collapse, economic, ecological? Can we buffer that somehow, or slow it down, or
Mm.
understand what that is, and in the process, build a collaborative community of people to support each other in that process. We still need craftsmen, we still need people to make stuff.
Yep.
And for everybody just to be out gardening and growing or those all their own food is not practical. Somebody's
Right.
got to feed the doctors, somebody's got to feed the shoemaker, the seamstress, right? Somebody has to grow the cotton, have the sheep, do the wool, have the loom, all those kinds of things, how that's going to live. So I think that in a future, hopefully it's more of an integrated society rather than a segregated society, in the way the
Yes.
fact that we're very hierarchical in all the different services that there are, and also of course the hierarchy of income and all those things too. So
Mm.
it's really tough to say what that is, but I would just hope that with Jem Bendell, who has also wrote Deep Adaptation, the paper in 2018, there's a whole collapse community now talking, and I'm part with them in that discussion also about what can happen, because that's permaculture too, in
Yep.
collapse or a coming collapse or pending, whatever, and whatever they
Yep.
define that as being, is how we can do that. But the best case scenario, I think, for us is to slow it down, whatever that might be, and open our eyes so that as we see it coming, we can have compassion
Mm.
on it, but also work diligently to hopefully raise the carrying capacity of the planet and buffer those changes, or just adapt and not be so set in the fact that no, we need to have this much growth, this much living, this much stuff, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yep.
And maybe we'll be back to 600 square foot houses. That's what I had my first house, right?
Yep.
It's just like, talk about simple living. But on the other hand, it's a whole, it's so complex in urban planning, all this kinds of things. That's out of my skill set. The best case scenario is you do that, you learn how it works, you get a job, you go, oh my gosh, I better call UD, and we find somebody either locally that works with you, or I or Warushka or anybody else on the team. We work with you and we get it done,
Yep.
and you don't have to worry about it. And we will take, and I have done for the projects, I have to say, I run the money for people too, right?
Okay.
It's like they don't have a business set up, and they don't have that. And Val did that. She didn't have it set up as a business yet. And I said, well, let's just do this. I'll do the proposal. You're going to be the designer. You're the project manager. You get those fees. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this work, and this work. I get this money. You get that money. And then the rest of it will pay for the course. Right. And now she had 3 projects done, and she actually has the work to go forward with that. So it's, that's really what I want it to be with UD, is you have an opportunity to learn. Somebody wants to hire you, and you don't have to say no.
Yeah.
There is no reason to say no when a project comes up, especially with the depth and breadth of experience that
Yep.
UD has. And that's just not me like coming to me. That's all these other people that we have in the
Yep.
group. We can pretty much get anything done.